Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Highruler, and today we are going over the war table and onboarding rework in patch 2.3 for Marvel's Avengers. Now, for anyone who's been around the channel for a while, in November of 2020, when I was doing a podcast with Joseph Aburo from Murphy's Multiverse, we were talking about the war table and how it was just kind of a disaster, right? So it's interesting to me that we're now finally getting that rework. So how we're going to do this, guys, is I will go through the blog, talk about it, give you guys my thoughts, and then open it up for you guys in the comments below. So with that being said, let's get into what they're going to be doing. So they start off by saying on March 24th, which is next Thursday, we are reworking the war table as part of patch 2.3 with the goal of streamlining missions and to improve the overall user experience. In addition, we're reworking the onboarding process for newer players to the game, including bringing back Nick Fury to the helicarrier as a guide. Let's get into the nitty gritty of exactly what we're doing, as there are quite a few changes. So they start off by saying in this section it's going to be drop zones, threat sectors, and hives. One of the first major changes you'll notice when interacting with the war table on March 24th is that missions no longer change every 15 minutes. Instead, drop zones and threat sectors appear on the war table at all times, and hives will appear once you have reached a power level comparable to the range of the region it is found in. Each region now has a minimum power level and a suggested max power level. Moving on at the suggested max power level will take you on a tour from the region to region as your strength increases. So they go on to say Eastern Seaboard is power level 1 to 25, Pacific Northwest is power level 25 to 50, Utah Badlands is power 50 to 75, Snowy Tundra is 75 to 100, Future Wastelands is 100 to 125, and then Wakanda is 100 to 140. Okay. Interesting. Now, I know there was some kind of confusion around how this power band stuff is going to work out. So it seems like once you're at max, you can just go anywhere, but it is kind of like that guiding light for those newer players. So cool. All right, I like it. Villain sectors. Villain sectors are now visible on the war table without needing to grab the mission chain from the faction mission givers. Normal villain sector mission chains rotate daily and are picked up per usual, while elite villain sectors rotate weekly. Okay. So all right. I mean, I guess that makes sense. So instead of grabbing them from the mission givers, you'll be getting them from Nick Fury, because they say normal villain sector mission chains rotate daily and are picked up per usual. Okay, so it is probably going to be Nick Fury then. Okay, cool. Vaults. Vaults are now always visible on the war table. You no longer need to obtain coordinates to have vaults appear. The related daily mission chain is acquired from the shield terminal or mission giver. Elite vaults rotate weekly. Okay, I mean, it was always kind of a pain to have to get the vault coordinates. So, I mean, like, honestly, this is a good quality of life change, I think, because it wasn't fun to go get those coordinates. It was kind of just like that barrier that was there. So for me anyways, I'm sure maybe some people may disagree, but for me, just having them there, you can select them, jump in, is a good change. And I think that's a change that was probably needed a long time ago, but better late than never in this regard. So let's talk about harm rooms. Individual hero harm rooms now have a minimum power level of 1. Versions of harm challenges 1 to 5 will become a part of the priority harm rotation. They still exist as part of the harm challenge mission chain, but will no longer be visible once completed. Okay, cool. That's fine. I mean, I don't personally run these anymore, so maybe someone who runs them can speak to this change more. I haven't run a harm room in, I guess, like 7, 8, 9 months, I guess. So for me, anyways, this is not content I interact with. So if you're in the comments and you kind of interact with this piece of content, the harm rooms, let me know. Is this a change that you like? Is it a change you don't like? I mean, I don't know personally, so hopefully someone can clue me in on that. So let's go into other changes. Flashback missions that ended with a boss fight have been replaced with Wasteland and Wakanda threat sectors. No flashback missions to end with a villain sector boss fight now. Rise and Shine now requires players to complete a mission in quick match. Heroic mission chains, previously known as iconic mission chains, now only show on a per hero basis. Okay, I mean, sure, I guess. I guess they're saving every sort of villain sector boss fight to the villain sectors, right? So I can see why they're doing that, because they're trying to establish villain sectors as that kind of like, okay, you want to jump in, you want to play villain sector, here you go, right? We're gonna, kind of separate everything, which I think is an interesting way to do it. It just comes down to like, what is the execution going to look like in terms of like when we're flowing through the game, when people are playing through the game, right? So to me, it does sound pretty good that everything has its own little section now. Just comes down to playing it now at this point, right? So let's go to new missions. We're also adding brand new missions to the war table that you can hop into on March 24th, including a new vault and a villain sector. So this hostile Earth is a threat sector in snowy tundra. Desperate Times is a drop zone in future wastelands. Cavaret Crash Site is a drop zone in future wastelands. Blood from a Stone is a threat sector in future wastelands. Wasteland Vault and Elite Wasteland Vault, of course, those are going to be in the wastelands. And Illusion of Truth and Unthinkable, which is the elite version of the Taskmaster villain sector. Finally, we are getting these in the game. Now, honestly, guys, I'm of two minds of this, right? So obviously the first mind is that yes, we are finally now getting the Taskmaster villain sector to the game. To me, that is good. Part of me is also thinking, man, it took a very long time to get these in the game, and it took a very long time for them to even kind of, implement them in any sort of way, right? Because for a long time, we had thought this was just gone. It was over. It was not coming to the game, right? Because Taskmaster was cut due to fan reception to the character and the villain and how many times he had shown up in the story. So to me, I was like, okay, he's never showing up. And unfortunately, at the time, if you guys remember the Assemble podcast stuff, Stardust and I were like, you know what? With how barren Future Wastelands is, kind of a funny word to use, it would have been good to include them and just get that content out there, right? Even though the reception to it wasn't the greatest, or, wasn't the greatest to Taskmaster specifically, you kind of had to make sure you have that content in your operation, which just wasn't there, right? Now, we're looking at this almost a year later, right? March 2022. And now that he's finally coming, I'm happy that he's coming. But man, that took a long time to get him, right? But in general, though, I would like to, kind of just say it's nice to see them filling out Future Wastelands, because that in itself was a very barren place to play, right? You only had a couple of missions there. There really wasn't a lot there. So it's nice that that is getting, kind of filled out with some drop zones and some threat sectors for the people who want to run those. The villain sector, though, I'm of two minds of it, right? So I would love to hear what you guys are thinking about it, because, I mean, anyways, to me, great that we're finally getting it, but man, it took a long time, right? So let me know what you guys think, and I would love to know more about that. So let's go to Avengers Initiative onboarding rework. Nick Fury returns to the helicarrier to guide newer players into the Avengers Initiative. You can speak to him at the war table upon logging in to see what he's been up to. In fact, he'll replace Jarvis and Maria Hill's narration in the beginning of the Avengers Initiative, during new tutorial videos, and in some missions. Although this is mainly for new players, existing players can go through the process with Nick Fury to catch up with him. Interesting. Okay. I know they said that there's going to be very little narrative surrounding Nick Fury and his return, but obviously I would like to see something kind of explain what's going on there, right? Obviously, with not knowing what is coming after this in terms of the roadmap or any kind of story beats, it's going to be really interesting how they're going to weave Nick Fury back into the narrative, when the last we saw of him was that he was frozen in time, right? Hopefully there's something there to kind of, explain what happened, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions coming up on the 24th and thereafter, where it's like, how did Nick Fury get here? Where's Nick Fury been? And what's the explanation, right? So I hope they're ready in follow-up after this to kind of give that explanation to kind of those questions. Now, the last part, quest/mission chain onboarding rework. Currently, there are a series of quests and mission chains that guide players to multiple mission types as a way of teaching new players how the Avengers Initiative works. Feedback has made it clear this can be confusing since there is minimal direction. The following changes will be made in patch 2.3 to offer clarity and to properly explain the systems, missions, and how to begin your journey in the Avengers Initiative as you progress, rather than one after another. So, they go on to say Reigning Supreme has been removed, Vault onboarding has been removed, Highbind has been removed, the previous version of cloning around has been removed, Iconic Avengers unlocks when reaching power level 10, Shield Protocol unlocks when reaching power level 20, Beating the Odds unlocks when reaching power level 20, Inhuman Sanctuary unlocks when reaching power level 30, Last Avengers Standing unlocks when reaching power level 130, Mega Hive unlocks when reaching power level 130, OLT unlocks when reaching power level 140, the Raid unlocks at power level 50, and Elite Raid unlocks at 160. So there you go, guys. That is it for the war table and everything to do with the onboarding process for newer players coming in patch 2.3 next week on the 24th. If I'm to give my thoughts on this, everything in general, right? It does sound pretty good in the way they're structuring everything now, because when you play the game before, and, I'd have to think back all the way to September 2020, right? When it came to just kind of getting into the online portion, it was very much so you're kind of dropped in and you figure it out as you go, right? And for some people, that is really good, right? Just kind of get in there, figure it out. I want to play this mission, I want to play that mission. It all kind of just, you weave your own way through the game at that point, right? Now, I'm looking at this specifically and kind of, how it's supposed to guide players from one area to the next one, how they're making every mission kind of available so you're not kind of waiting on that, war table refresh, how they're kind of making villain sectors more available, how they're making vaults more available. I look at all this stuff now and I'm like, okay, this does seem to be a good change in terms of the way they're structuring their war table in general, right? So from there, I'm looking at it going, okay, this is a pretty positive change, right? What I would like to get though is obviously that newer player who's kind of coming into the game at this point and get their opinions on it, right? Because I'm looking at this with the lens of someone who's been playing since beta at this point, right? So for me, I don't know if these changes are specifically structured to kind of benefit someone like myself, because I mean, they could change the war table and it's not really going to bother me, right? But if they're making these in mind with a newer player, I think the newer player opinion is the one that we should be looking after, because this is totally just for them. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, right? Like a lot of this is just for them, right? A lot of this, though, is for everybody, right? And I've kind of said, filling out the future wastelands is good. The Taskmaster villain sector stuff, of course, there's two minds of it. So, I mean, this is all right. This is good. But I mean, like this stuff right here and how they're kind of doing a lot of this stuff, I mean, it's hard for me to give my opinion on it because it's not a change that is aimed and targeted at someone like me, right? So, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's nice now that we finally have a date for patch 2.3. And of course, that leaves one last week in March, right? So, I mean, obviously, with 2.3 coming out next week, I know all eyes are going to be on that last week, mine included, because I had said publicly that if they leave March without a roadmap, it will be kind of a disaster at that point, right? I think a lot of people were expecting way earlier, if not, kind of the end of February, early bit of March for that roadmap. We are now past the point of when we got the roadmap last year. I believe at this point already, Square Enix Presents has already kind of, launched. I believe this is the day that the next gen versions had actually launched last year. So we are actually farther behind last year at this point today. So, I mean, obviously I want to look towards, that last week of March, if not next week, and say, yes, I hope something comes, because yeah, if we leave March personally, I mean, it's not going to look pretty, right? So, I mean, regardless of that, 2.3 and everything to do with 2.3 does sound like that house cleaning is sort of kind of getting done. Obviously they're looking at 2.4 for anyone who missed Brian on Doom's podcast. That is going to be targeting event refreshes, making events more worth it, because I'm sure they're probably seeing event participation drop off. So it'll be interesting to see what they do 2.4, but I hope 2.4 isn't just that. So we're waiting on some details for what is coming after 2.3, specifically targeting 2.4 and what to expect from that. But that is a conversation for another time, guys. That is the end of the video here today. If you like this, you want more Marvel's Avengers content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a nice little comment, and I'll see you guys next time here. Enjoy the rest of the day and the night. Take care of yourselves. Later, guys.